And I had the experience of, while the doctors and medical staff were working on me, all of a sudden I floated out of my body just below the ceiling and I was watching them work on me. But then the next thing you know, I was in a tunnel. And
hello, family. Welcome back to the Explore the Extraordinary podcast. My name is Betty. Today, I'm joined by Connie, and Connie is a psychic medium, an author, a spiritual teacher, and I'm really excited for your willingness to come and serve our community at IANDS today. I'm going to toss it right over to you to let us know who you are.
Great. Thank you so much, Betty. I'm really excited to be here with you today and give everybody a little bit of insight onto who I am. So yes, I am a psychic medium. I started having spiritual awareness as a young child. So at the very young age of about 4 years old, I started seeing spirit. And it came in the form of seeing a mysterious old man in my basement. I had lived in upstate New York at the time, and typical for those homes there, we had a sort of semi-finished basement, and I would go down routinely. Saturday morning was laundry day and follow my mom down there to do the laundry. And then one day, as I was going back up the stairs, I had this weird sensation, like there was someone or something behind me. And when I turned around, I saw this mysterious old man in the far corner of the room. So coincidentally, that far corner of the room, the door back there led to the boiler room, where the furnace and gas pipes were. So my father was an immigrant from Italy, with a very thick, broken accent. And he would tell me, this story that there was this monster behind that door because he never wanted me to go in that area. So the Italian slang for monster is called Momo. So I was, from a very young age, don't go over in that area. There's a Momo back there. Okay, probably maybe frowned upon these days to tell your child, scare the heck out of them, but it did the job, right? It kept me out of the boiler room from getting hurt. So, I see this old man and I go back up the stairs and I'm terrified because the first thing that goes through my mind is, oh my God, did I just see the Momo? So I ran, into my bedroom and threw the covers over my head and started crying. I was, wondering what was going on. So I ran back out and, went to my mom and I said, Mom, I saw the Momo. And she just looked at me like I was crazy and said, what are you talking about? There's no Momo down there. So now, I'm really confused because, my father's saying there's a Momo down there. And my mother's saying, no, what's going on? I saw something. So kind of fast forward, I kind of took it for like, okay, yeah, Connie, you probably saw a shadow or something down there. But then the next Saturday was laundry day again. And there I go down the stairs. And sure enough, as I'm descending the stairs, I see that old man again. And so I continued to see him a couple more times. And then finally, one time as we were going back up the stairs, I was just staring at him and not moving. And so my mother said, Connie, come on, what are you looking at? And I point directly at the old man. And my mother looks in that direction and she says, there's nothing there. Come on. So now you can imagine I'm 4 years old and I'm really confused because, first of all, did I see the monster? Why is my mother not acknowledging that there's an old man there? So I really didn't know what to make of it. So I saw the old man a couple more times and then I stopped seeing him. And in my mind, I've kind of reconciled that this must be some big family secret, right? So that's why they made up the story of the monster, because there was an old man living down there. And apparently now he must have moved to go live with some other family because he probably wanted some good food and a bed because there was nothing down there. So this is what my little mind rationalized. So I never mentioned him to anybody because I figured it was a secret. So shortly after that, and that's when I first started seeing spirit. And spirit is so clever, and I'm sure you've heard this, they're so intelligent. So what they decided to do is like, okay, she wasn't really understanding, seeing this old man in the basement. So what started happening is I started to hear spirit. So I started out being clairvoyant or clear seeing, and then I became clairaudient or clear hearing. And this came in the form of my stuffed animal. So I had a little stuffed animal, a little lion cub named Leah. and I'd take her everywhere, one of my best friends growing up. And all of a sudden, Leah could talk one day, or so I thought. And I would just hear these little strange, like, oh, you're doing great. Like if I was coloring, or, oh, your dad's about to come home. And then my dad would pull in the driveway. Or every time the phone rang, like, Leah would know who it was. I'd hear, that's Aunt Julia, or that's Uncle Tommy, or who it was, right, on the phone. And then especially if I was playing games, like, when you're a child, you play those memory match games, I would like move my hand over where to pick, and I'd hear that one, pick that one. And sure enough, it was always the match. So that's how, I started to hear as a child. And then typical what you hear is a lot of children that experience hearing or seeing spirit or having an imaginary friend. Once they start school and, your analytical brain takes over, a lot of the times those extra perceptive sensory, sensations disappear. So that's kind of what happened with me. I started school and I didn't hear or see anymore. But what started happening is then I started to just know things. So I had a really strong sense of clear knowing or clear cognizant. And this really helped me kind of sail all through high school as almost just about a straight A student. I never studied. I never, I could read a novel in like, half an hour and ace a test. So I had this very high retention and just kind of like, I just knew things. So really what started happening is as I, grew older as an adult, little sporadic things would happen. I just know things. As I became my late teens, I would pass someone like walking on the street or in the mall and see a vision that was associated with them. But, I didn't understand that something was different about me because I didn't come from a background or a family that talked about anything metaphysical or psychics or mediums. That just was not in my upbringing or my, my frame of reference. So I didn't think anything of it. So, spirit and your soul and the universe really, I say if it's your calling, your soul's going to keep calling you to what you're supposed to be doing. And for me, this came in the form of 3 near-death experiences. So these all happened, well, the first 2 happened in my early 20s, and they were all related to some adverse reaction to medication. And the first one, I ended up in the hospital, and I was in a state of anaphylaxis, and, they're giving me medications. And next thing you know, I'm in this bright white room, and it was like no ceilings, floors, or walls or anything, just this white space. And all of a sudden, this illuminated being walks towards me. I couldn't make out any features, I'm sorry. And they placed this big book in my lap, a huge, huge book, took up my whole lap. And as I'm sitting there on the floor, the pages of the book start to turn. And I could see from the moment I was born until the present day. And with those images, I experienced the feelings that I, felt at the time, the emotions. And then when I came to, I went home, I was discharged. I told my mom, I said, wow, I had this really incredible dream. And I started to describe some of the images that I saw, which I was just an infant, under 2 years old. And my mother validated, because I was describing like paintings on the wall, certain things on the table, and my mother validated that everything was correct. So I didn't know it at the time, but I had a life review. So kind of fast forward, well, actually what started happening right after that, I started experiencing sleep paralysis. And for those of you that don't know what that is, that's kind of like you're in between state of waking and sleeping, and all of a sudden you can't move. You're frozen in your bed, you can't talk, you can't move, and it can be, terrifying to some extent. So this started happening to me like a few times a month. But the strange thing about that is while this was happening, every single time as I lay there in the bed, unable to move or speak, I saw myself in spirit form come out of my body, straddle my body, and try to lift myself up, right? And I was experiencing like this humming vibration, like white noise sound. And I kept hearing, you need to lift yourself up. You need to raise yourself up. I kept hearing those words over and over again. So, of course, I'm thinking to myself, well, yeah, that's obvious, right? I can't move. I need to lift up. I need to get up. And I didn't understand it. But what was happening is my soul, was literally telling me, Connie, you need to lift yourself up, meaning my vibration. I needed to raise my vibration so I can do this mediumistic work. But of course, I didn't understand it, again, having no frame of reference. So the message fell on deaf ears. And again, what happened? A second near-death experience a couple years later. This one was a little bit more medically intensive. Allergic reaction to medication landed me in the hospital where I went into ventricular tachycardia. Or I had a VTAC. And I had the experience of, while the doctors and medical staff were working on me, all of a sudden I floated out of my body just below the ceiling, and I was watching them work on me. But then the next thing you know, I was in a tunnel. And I would describe the tunnel similar to like the space of, if you've ever had an MRI, that's how it felt to me, about that size and space. And I was moving through the tunnel. It felt like if you've ever been on a simulated ride, like at Disney or something, where you're going fast but slow at the same time, if that makes any sense. So here I am in this bright light tunnel, laying on my back feet first, and I'm going toward this big bright light. And as I get to the end of the tunnel, I start hearing that white high vibrational noise again, that humming sound. And my feet go into that doorway. And it was like as if I was sinking into jello, is how I would explain it. I kind of touched in and sunk in, surrounded by that white light. And I felt so safe and loved, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful feeling. I wasn't scared at all. But that at that moment, they used the defibrillator paddles and brought me back. So I went back after I was discharged. The doctors had no reason why this happened to me. And it would be later discovered several years later that one of the medications I was taking for allergies had a adverse effect on heart rhythms, which was later pulled off the market by the FDA. So that's what happened to me. So luckily I had no permanent damage, and I thought I went back to work as usual. I was working in New York City at the time. But what happened is all of a sudden, as I was sitting on the train ride, commuting, as I was sitting next to people more and more, I was getting little glimpses of visions that pertained to them. So one day, as I was walking around on my lunch, break, somehow I just started walking in a different direction, and I got pulled towards a psychic shop. Never had a reading before, but I was just very intrigued. I went in. I got a reading. I was fascinated. I kept going, twice a month for readings. And then eventually I bought my first deck of tarot cards there. This was in 1991. So now I'm thinking, all right, I'm having these little experiences. Maybe something's going on with me. I'm going to do these tarot cards because I watched the lady do them. And I'm saying to myself, how hard can it be to read these card definitions and put them down and say what they mean? I've got this great sort of photogenic, mind, and I absorb things so quickly. Oh no. So I get the tarot cards out. I get home. I read the little pamphlet. I read it over and over and over again. Nothing is sticking in my brain, which is highly unusual. So true to my nature, I will say I'm a Gemini. So if it doesn't hold my attention more than 5 seconds, it's probably gone. And so these tarot cards suffered that terrible fate of my not having any patience. And I threw them in the bottom of like a storage chest that I kept for odds and ends in the bottom of my closet. And they stayed there for 10 years. And during those 10 years, I had a lot of work to do. And that's where I had to work on growing my own soul and work on my soul's evolution and progression, which I did. Got a lot of negativity in my life. And then just about as I'm kind of freeing myself from things that are keeping me from hiring my vibration, my third NDE occurs. And this is post-surgery. And the next thing you know, I thought I was dreaming, but I found myself in this beautiful place. I was in clouds at first, and then the clouds cleared, and I was in this, lush meadow, and little children came and greeted me, and I started dancing with them. Like they were maybe like, nursery school, kindergarten age. And we were dancing like a Ring Around the Rosie type of song. And I was singing this song that I knew I didn't learn here on the earth plane. It was a beautiful song. And I was singing in a beautiful voice, which I know did not happen on the earth plane for sure. So I'm singing and dancing, and everybody's just beautiful, rosy cheeks, and everything's high definition color, and just gorgeous. And then all of a sudden, the children kind of stop singing and dancing, and they move on either side of me, and they're looking in the distance. And as I look, I see this man walking towards me. And as he gets closer and closer, I recognize him to be Jesus. I was raised Catholic, went to Catholic school. So to me, he looks as if, what Jesus would look like to me. And the thing about him, he had the longer hair, the beard. He was wearing like a white tunic and a wooden cross and sandals. But the thing that was so intriguing is when he came close to me and he looked at me and he said to me, "Do you like it here?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I love it here." And then I looked around and I was like, "But where are my children?" Because I had two small children under the age of 5 at the time. And he says, "Well, it's not their time yet." And I said, "Oh, okay." And then I started to sing and dance again with the children. And he looked at me again. And I remember like staring at his eyes, and they were so like intriguing because they were blue, then green, then brown, with like these gold flecks in them. And it was like, he wasn't looking at me. He wasn't looking through me. It's like I knew he saw the whole of me as he was looking at me. And so he asked me again, "Do you like it here?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, of course, I love it here." And again, asked, "But where are my children?" And he said to me, again, "It is not their time, and it is not your time either. You have yet to become who you were meant to be." And with that, I woke up. So now I'm thinking to myself, well, that was a cool and strange dream. And I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, but who am I supposed to be? What does that mean, right? I have no idea what this means. A couple weeks later, I was going to find out. A few weeks later, out of the blue, I get a call from someone who needed a reader at a psychic fair. Now, I don't know how this lady got to me. I've never done a reading. Those cards are still sitting in the bottom of my closet, but somehow I think she was desperate, and I did confirm this. She had a lot of cancellations. Somehow somebody gave her my name. So I agreed to do the psychic fair. It was a Thursday that she called me. The psychic fair is Saturday. I'm like, okay, yeah, great, I'll do it. I go make sure I have the cards. Yeah, I'm good. I get in the car come Saturday, and all of a sudden reality hits. I'm driving along and I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I've never done a reading. I don't know what these cards mean. This is crazy. What did you get yourself into? So I started to get sick as I'm driving. I'm sweating. I'm nauseous. So my plan was, is I was going to show up. I was going to apologize to the lady and say, "I'm so sorry. I can't do this. I've never done a reading, but please, how can I help?" Right? I'll check people in at the door. I'll do something. Right? So this is my plan. I arrive there and it's crowded. The lady bustles me in. She's like, "Okay, quick, go over there in that far corner. There's a room there." And so I'm like, oh my gosh. I said, "Look, I'm really sorry. I can't do this." And she just gave me this look and she said, "I need you to sit in that room and read." I was like, oh my goodness. And she's like, "Look, you're on the far end. There's so many other people here. You probably won't get that many people." So I'm like, okay. So I sit in the room and I'm sweating. I'm just miserable. And of course, a lady comes in and she wants a reading. So I'm trying to make small talk with her as I'm pulling those cards out. You ever pull a new deck of cards out of the sleeve? It's like painful, right? So she sees me doing this and she's giving me the look. And I know she's thinking I'm a hoax. And I am at that point, right? Because I don't know what I'm doing. So I start making small talk. I'm like, well, have you ever, is this your first time getting a reading? And she's, no, I get many readings. I've been going to psychics for all these years. So this just really increased my level of anxiety, right? Like through the roof. So I get the cards out. I don't know what I'm doing. And I start nervously just throwing them on the table in this weird circle. I look in the middle, I'm like, oh my God, there's too much space there. I better throw some in there. So I just use all 76 cards, making these strange piles, and I don't say anything. So the lady says to me, Connie, are you ever going to say anything? And I was like, oh my goodness. I looked down at the cards and it was the strangest thing. I literally had like an electric shock coming to the top of my head and just go through my body. And I looked down at those cards and I started to talk. And I said to her, and she's probably, maybe in her 50s at the time. And I said to her, do you understand some legal paperwork? I see like a lawyer, legal paperwork, and it has to do with somebody passing, and there's a big family secret, and something gets revealed, and I see this trip overseas, and there's this big amount of money that I see coming to you. Everything is like a surprise. Do you understand any of this? And she tells me she just found out she was adopted. She received communication from a lawyer in Europe that her biological father had passed, leaving her this big estate, and she was leaving in 2 weeks to travel to Europe to claim her inheritance. So I was like spot on, right, with what I said. So now I'm really freaked out, right? Because I'm like, how do I know that? Just by looking at these piles that I threw on the table. So I continued to do the reading and gave her more stuff, which she validated. And then she said, at the end, she's like, wow, that was one of the best readings I ever had. And she left and I had a happy customer. And then I went into the bathroom and threw up. And that's how I started reading, literally, right? And so I started reading, and fast forward, after about 10 years, I started hearing again, and I was hearing names. And when I would ask people about the names, they would say, well, that person's deceased. And I'm like, well, what's going on? I'm hearing, names of that people that have passed. So then I realized, as I started to look into this, I still really didn't know a lot about the metaphysical. I realized maybe I'm a medium. And I started taking some classes. And then I realized, kind of some all this. I had some classes that really weren't doing me any justice. Let's put it that way. So I had a rough start. I didn't have really great training to begin with. And then I had someone cross my path that I saw do a demonstration, and that person happens to be Janet Nohavec. And I don't know if you've heard of her, since passed, but she started the Journey Within Spiritualist Church in New Jersey. And she came to Sarasota and did a demonstration and offered classes. And when I saw her, it was like, yes, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm looking for. So I started taking classes with her and other affiliated teachers there. And then a few years ago, I became certified with the Forever Family Foundation. And I do grief retreats for them. I do Signs of Life Radio, giving readings on the air, raffles. And then on my own, I have my own practice here where I do training. I also do training through the Journey Within. I do fundraisers, charity events. And just a couple of weeks ago, I also became certified with the Helping Parents Heal Network as well, organization. So I'm really, truly blessed and so honored to be part of these, fantastic organizations that provide services to the bereaved. So that's me. And the other exciting news that I have is that I just finished writing my book. It is called You Are Soul Beautiful. And it is basically a story about your soul's quest to find its true destiny. And I include a lot of information about our souls and how we progress here in this life and the afterlife. And then I kind of use my own story to show how I was in these different classifications of soul levels and how I moved through them to finally reach my soul's true purpose, which is to be a psychic medium. So I'm really excited about that. And it should be out, on Amazon come October 1st. So That's me.
Thanks so much, Connie. Wow. Yeah, I love your stories are amazing. And okay, so something that came up for me while you were talking, just even describing what your book is about, talking about the progression of the levels of the soul and kind of
Mhm.
finding your destiny. Do you think that somebody who hasn't had a near-death experience is able to find out what their soul came here to do?
Absolutely. And I give examples of that because even before I had my near-death experiences, things were happening to me, and things were happening around me. Certain things that I was resonating with, or objects or places, and I didn't understand why. And so it shows, besides my near-death experience, I had a past life regression, which helped put some of the pieces together. I had an astrological chart reading, what helped put pieces together. But there were things that were happening, and what so many people, and we know people like this that kind of like maybe jump around from job to job. They're never satisfied, or they're in jobs that just don't make them happy. It's because they're really not doing what makes their soul happy. And people really need to experience a lot of different things. Like I'll give you an example. Let's say you had a beloved pet that passed, right? And that feeling of love and helplessness, right? Because you can't do anything for them. Well, maybe experiencing that loss, was your soul telling you that you were meant to be a veterinarian, right? But you had to experience that feeling of helplessness, and experience that love, and to see what that meant to you, and like, wow, I don't ever want to feel that again. I don't want anybody to have to go through something like that. So there are things that happen in our lives, and at the time we may think there's sad things or terrible things, but you always have to trust that your soul and the universe are going to work to put you on the right path. You just have to be open to receiving those signs and those messages.
That's really well said. Do you have any tips for people who are dealing with a lot of fear and not being able to find that sort of foundation and trust?
Yeah, it really takes a lot. So again, it's your attitude, really. And in the book, I talk about these classifications of souls, and I call them solitudes. Okay, and what they are your attitude, your human attitude to how you're going to respond to your soul's or the universe's messages to keep you on your spiritual path or your path of enlightenment. So, are you going to just ignore the signs? And this is a lot of the times when we're dealing with people that can't get out of their own way. Maybe they're dealing with addiction, or, some other sort of mental or physical, capacity incapacity that, deters them from getting on their path. Or maybe you're just confused, right? And you just don't know. One of the things that, a lot of people do is, and I did this myself, and this is part of being the confused, right, in that level. A lot of people think that you're supposed to do what your parents did, right? Follow in the footsteps of your parents. My mom was a secretary all her life. So I graduated high school and became a secretary because that was my frame of reference. And, that's kind of like the easy way out, because we can look and see from our own parents, okay, they did this and they're okay, right? So it's kind of like a safe bet, so to speak, right? You don't want to go outside your comfort zone. But that means that, that may not have been your path. So that may not be fulfilling to you, which is, in my case, what happened. So, you may be in a situation where, and again, I'm going to use myself as an example. When I finally realized, yes, you are a valid, authentic medium, this is what you were supposed to be doing, I was compromised because I couldn't leave my other full-time job yet that, didn't let me focus on my psychic medium practice. I also was the caretaker for two parents that had a lot of health issues and were in decline. And then my children and family obligations. So there are things that, people know, or they may realize or start to realize, yes, this is what I'm supposed to do, but they can't get there. Maybe it's financial constraints, maybe again, family obligations, limitations. Maybe it's, again, some sort of limitation, whether it's physical, mental, emotional limitation. So there are a lot of different things that keep us and try to restrict us from getting on our true path. And this is where, I kind of talk about on my book, what you can do and be open to those messages. And really, our purpose here is, what are we going to do to remove those obstacles should we encounter them to get us on the right path, right? Are we just going to be complacent and say, this is the best I can do? And if that happens, and if you truly did try your best and for whatever reason you can't get to where you're supposed to be, then in the afterlife, you're given the choice. Do you want to try again and give it another shot? And you come back, be reincarnated and try it again. So, it's all about what you want to put into it in this life.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think those are great examples. And I think whoever's meant to hear this will hear this, and I'm sure that will resonate with them, what you just shared. I'm wondering if maybe you could share a story about a time when you had like a mystical sign come your way, or a synchronicity that like you absolutely could not deny that you had this connection to the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's a lot of them, but really what happened to me, a few years before my dad passed, I was in a hotel room in Jacksonville, Florida, where my son was receiving an academic award for the college he was attending there. And so I brought my dad with me. So, I mentioned my dad was an immigrant. He had a 4th grade education, and came to this country, to make a better life. So his first grandson, went to college. And so I wanted him to see what that looked like. I don't think he ever saw a college. So I thought this would be a great experience. So him and I took the trip. And that night in the hotel room, I was excited about the day that we were going to be spending with my son, Nicholas, and all the family activities. And I woke up early in the morning and I looked over the clock in the hotel room, said 444. And so I thought, oh, okay, that's weird. Now, at this time, I wasn't really doing, a whole lot of this work yet. I was just getting my feet wet. So I was like, okay, yeah, 444, that's strange. And I just kind of dismissed it. Well, that sign continued for months and months and months. It was ridiculous. It was like in my face. It was on, my GPS. It was on I would wake up, once or twice a week at 444. It was on receipts. It was on license plates. It was everywhere. So I started journaling it. And I wrote down, and the way I do my mediumship, if someone in spirit shows me the number 4, it usually means number of children or grandchildren, or the date itself, or it means the month of April for the 4th month. So I wrote down April for 4, and 4 plus 4 plus 4 is 12. So I wrote down, what is April 12th? April 12th, it has to mean something. So then, of course, I looked it up, and I know a little bit about angel numbers, and 444 is an angel number, and it means you don't need to worry about anything. Your angels and guides are there. They're protecting you. They're keeping you on your path. And I thought, that's great. Yep. Okay. I'm coming into my spiritual self, and that makes sense for me. But intuitively, I knew this 444 had something to do with my father. I just knew it. So time went by. And my father started to decline in health. And he was, this was like in February. And I decided I needed to call his remaining family, brothers and sisters, and a nephew he was really close to come down to Florida because, he was declining. So they came down and spent a couple days with him. And the morning that they were leaving early, like 7 a.m. on a flight. I got up early to make sure the flights were on time, and I opened up my laptop, and my laptop had like a big clock, those big digital numbers. And when I opened up the laptop, it said 444, and the power went out in my house for no reason. So all of a sudden I hear my husband yelling from the bedroom, he was sleeping, it woke him up. He's like, the power went out at 444, because he knew about my theory that it had something to do with my father. And I thought it would be the day that he passed, is what I, figured. And then I had told my aunt that had come from New York, and she comes running out of the guest bedroom, and her eyes are wide, and she's like, It went out at 444. I'm like, I know. So they left, and sure enough, a couple of days before my dad passed, I was going to visit him and take him out because he was in the wheelchair at this point. And as I was coming in through it was like a guarded entrance, a car cut right in front of me and cut me off. And sure enough, the license plate had 444 in front of it. This was 3 days before my father passed. And so I had been working with the hospice nurses, and it was like the beginning of March, I'd say. And so they were doing their plan for March and then for April. And so I say to the hospice nurse, I said, well, my father's going to pass on April 12th. And of course, she just said, oh, okay, okay, honey, gave me that look, and then did that look like she's batshit crazy, right? So, I was I'm used to that by now, right? And I'm like, I'm telling you, even my own mother, she's like, oh, how could you know that, Connie? I said, I'm telling you, I've been seeing this number. And sure enough, my father passed on April 12th. And I had seen that sign, for a year and a half, almost 2 years prior to his passing. Now, I want to follow up with that by saying, just because you see numbers doesn't mean somebody's passing. I knew, because I'm intuitive, that this was a sign related to my father, because nobody really can predict somebody's passing. That's up to God or the creator or whoever you acknowledge, right? But I just knew this to be true. And he still sends those signs today. So, keep letting us know he's still around.
That is amazing. What a great story. I love that tangible evidence of something bigger. And you also mentioned that, having an open mind is a really great way to start to receive signs. I hear people say really often, I never receive signs. And I say, well, if you affirm that you never receive signs, then you will never receive signs.
Right.
But, having that open mind seems like it's something that,
yeah. And I touch a little bit about this on in my book as well, because the one thing about signs is, one, I said, a lot of people, especially come with readings, they have the code word that they've set up with their person, right? And, all the time, well, do you know what the code word is? And I do get it, often, I'd say. But I do also get signs. And sometimes it's the sign that they know that they've asked their loved ones for, and sometimes it's signs of things to come. And then I get the emails like, you were right, I got that specific sign. But the thing about it, it's okay to designate a special sign that means something to you and your loved one. But also, don't fixate on it. Don't spend every waking moment looking for this sign. You need to let the universe do it when they want to do it, right? So it's got to happen organically. We can't force them. It's just like when we do a reading, we can't just summon anybody to come. Who's going to come is who's going to come. The spirit world controls that, right? And they control the signs. So, so I'd say just keep an open mind, relax. It'll happen. And also don't box yourself in. Like I asked for a sign just the other day, something I have going on, and I asked my parents to send me a balloon. And as I was walking, while I was telling them this, and I said, I understand. And in my mind, I saw a hot air balloon, right? And I'm like, where I live, I said, I've lived here for over 12 years. I've never seen a hot air balloon. I said, so I'm not going to ask for that. Just a little red balloon would be fine, right? So sure enough, couple days later, I open up my laptop, and you know how you always have those, mine at least has different pictures, every couple of days they switch them out. And what's there? A big hot air balloon, a red one, right? And I was like, oh, so you see, I don't have to see the actual physical one. It could come in the way of a picture. It could be a stuffed animal. It could be something, somebody's shirt or a sign. So don't box yourself in, right? Because if you're going to ask for a rainbow colored unicorn wearing cowboy boots and sunglasses with a green tail, if you asked me to go find that for you, it would take forever, right? So be a little practical in what you ask for.
I really like that. Yeah, it's keep it simple,
Right,
and be amazed by it. It doesn't have to be something really super detailed. It could be something like a flower or a feather or, something like that. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Going based off of this, I just want to ask you this question. What does your family think about the fact that this is what you do with your life? Are your children receptive to it? Just kind of curious what that's like for you.
Well, that's interesting. So one of the things that I really, kind of regret is my parents never saw me do this work. Okay, so they both passed. Now I don't think my father really understood it. My mother. I'd say maybe 50%. When someone would ask her what I would do, she says, "Oh, sometimes she goes to people's houses and talks about dead people." I mean, that was her, summation of it. Okay. My husband is very supportive. My kids are supportive. Of course, when I was first doing it, and you never want the mom that's the psychic, right? When they come home from school and you're like, "What happened to your phone?" And they look at you like, "How did you know something happened to my phone?" Right? So that was always like a little, "Oh, my mother's strange. She really does have eyes in the back of her head." So I think at first they thought it was a little strange, and even I'd say my younger son probably a little more embarrassing, like, "Mom, don't talk about that." But now they're young adults now, so they get it, they understand it, and my family's very supportive of it.
It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I'm just always curious, like, what is a person's inner
Yeah,
life like after coming out of this spiritual closet and being really loud about it and working on your book and all of those things? It's amazing
right.
that you have support, not only from your physical family, but from your family in the non-physical. That's also so amazing. I've really enjoyed getting to know you and listen to you. And I'm just curious if there's anything else that you'd like to share to feel more complete about our time together.
Well, I'm really excited to be one of the presenters at the IANDS conference at the end of August. So I'm excited to meet everybody there, and I'm excited for that. And I have an event planned for New York, November 1st, in Poughkeepsie, New York, at the Connie and Hackett Theater, which is right next to Vassar College. So I'm excited for that. And I'll get to visit a lot of my family. It's from where I'm from. So. But yeah, I've got a lot of good things. I plan to get some more training programs on the books for next year, both in-line and in person. And I'm just excited to do this work, and to really meet such great people that are like-minded, but bring so much peace and validation, to those that are grieving, and just really prove that we never go away after we leave our physical bodies, that your loved ones are always near. So I can never put a price tag on that, because the joy that I see through tears is just it's just amazing.
Wow, that's so powerful. Thank you so much, Connie. Super grateful for you. All of your information will be in the liner notes of this episode so that people can connect with you. And again, thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Betty. Take care. Bye-bye.